What is the crack, everyone? It is Nathan here, aka the Rambling Kern, and head instructor of Kern School of Combat. So last week I did a video on a introduction to arrowheads in Ireland, and the sort of arrowheads that you would expect to have found within Ireland throughout history. And one of the things I mentioned in that is that I believe a lot of arrowheads were miscategorized as arrowheads that were in fact something else. And anyone who's familiar with the Kern will know that they were renowned for using one particular type of weapon. And there's numerous different accounts of these. All of these are going to be things I'm going to touch on in the future, but I just kind of wanted to dive a little bit into the reasons for me mentioning as to why I believe these arrows were miscategorized. And it also turns out I'm not the only one. So what I'm touching on is the Irish war dart. Now you would know this from the title of the video, but had to build the suspense. So the Irish war dart was not unique to Ireland. It was popular all across Europe. There's artwork all across Europe of these, which I'm going to show. However, it continued in Ireland like many other weapons way past their popularity was had faded in mainland Europe, and found a particularly predominant use and role on the Irish battlefield. My main inclination for this is when you have a heavily forested area, things like longbows and distance archery is not quite as useful or as practical because you're in a much closer quarters environment. You don't have the distance to be able to shoot things. As a result, something like a war dart is much more appropriate, and also you're dealing with other Irish people who generally at the time didn't really wear a huge amount of armour. They preferred not to stay more light and nimble as they traversed the Irish terrain. And if anyone knows anything about Irish terrain or have watched my previous video on my hike through Glenmalure, you'll kind of understand the reasons for that. So some of the information I'm going to pull on from today is from a fantastic work about Irish medieval archery by Andrew Halpin. I'm going to link to where you can download that document if you wish to read it. It is a fantastic read. It's actually going to be a huge resource for many of the videos that I'm going to be doing on archery in Ireland from the Bronze Age period up until the Renaissance period. So really recommend checking out that piece by Andrew Halpin. It's a fantastic read, an incredible resource. And in it he does state that certain arrowheads of certain types were likely miscategorized, and I know he does mention in there that he thinks some of these were likely crossbow bolts, which to me makes total sense, because you're going to have a much shorter yet stouter arrow being used for these, and as a result the socket itself where the arrow meets the or the arrowhead I should say meets the wood. So in this example here, this will be wider obviously on a crossbow bolt because it is shorter and stouter. Sadly I do not have a crossbow, nor will I be getting one. They are classed as a firearm in Ireland, so unfortunately, thanks to our rather strict weapon laws, I will not be getting one anytime soon. However, if I know anyone in the UK who wants to have me over to shoot some, I'd be more than happy to do that. So the reason why I mentioned in my previous video as to why I believe these heads are miscategorized is because in Halpin's study you'll actually see there's a number of heads that are 14mm in socket diameter and bigger. And the reason I mentioned 14mm is that I actually had these wonderful examples made by the amazing Hector Cole. Anyone who knows Hector, he is an incredible blacksmith. So we have a winged barbed type that you see here. We have a bodkin type, and we have a traditional leaf type. So these will be getting shafted and used for tests in the not too distant future. However, I just wanted to show you kind of a cross section of these different types of heads. So this one is based on a find, I believe, that comes from Dublin, with similar socket diameter, which again I believe is miscategorized. And I do know the head, the actual bodkin itself, is roughly the same diameter or same dimensions. Now anyone who looks at this especially, that to me does not look like an arrow or even a crossbow bolt. If we compare it to the actual arrow that I have here, which is fairly standard 32-inch arrow that I use for target practice with an 80-pound bow, this socket actually sits over the arrowhead that's currently on it, with room to spare. As you can see, moves about. So to me that would be far too big for an arrow, and also the shaft's going to be far too big. So to me that is most likely a war dart of some sort, which shows that there was an inclination for these to be used for going against the armour. So I know there is reference to these mainly being used against horses and cavalry. It makes total sense to me, especially if we look at these sort of winged types, which do appear in artwork, which I'll bring up on screen as I show these. And this type will do awful damage if that hit any sort of fleshy target. Quite similar to a swallowtail arrow that you'd see the English longbowmen used. Now, these themselves are, I believe, exactly 14 mil in internal diameter. 14 mil. So that is on the lower end of some of the socket diameters that were found in Ireland. So again, that diagram that I would have shown, 14, 15, 16 and 17, and that accounts for all periods within that study, which I believe dates from something like the 9th century up to the 16th century. So quite a broad spectrum, so accounting for a lot of different types of arrowheads. But as a result, I think a good few of those were miscategorized as arrowheads when in fact they were most likely war darts. And I think that's why you see a lot of these in Irish artwork. You don't see many of these appear in archaeological finds or in museums. So I think a lot of these were just miscategorized, and as a result have gone somewhat ignored when it comes to Irish military archaeology. Something that I would like to rectify, because I think these are a very important weapon when it comes to Irish history and the overall importance of Irish weapons. And like I said, these remained in use in Ireland well past when other countries were using them. And it is something that the Kern became famous for, is the use of these darts. So, and as a result, the Irish themselves. Now, as I said, I do have some tests planned for these in the not too distant future. I need to get these shafted, which I'll be doing soon. The only thing is, as you will have seen in some of the depictions, these generally are on quite a long shaft, so I'm just trying to find an appropriate shaft for these, because obviously it needs to be relatively thin and quite long. So those will be coming. Once again, these beautiful heads were made for me by Hector Cole. I will put a link to his website in the description. So we have the bodkin, the standard kind of leaf-shaped head, and the barbed kind of swallow's tail head. We'll be doing tests on all of these, both for distance and for penetration. For more videos on these, I really recommend checking out Todd of Todd's Workshop and his channel. He has some fantastic videos on war darts, and there's some quite unique aspects to Irish war darts that I hope to touch on in future videos. So if you're interested in learning more about these, please give us a like and subscribe. It really does help the channel. Trying to close in on 1,000 subscribers by hopefully in the next month or so. So please do share these videos around. They're starting to gain popularity, and I really do appreciate the support. So if you enjoyed this, give us a like and a subscribe, and once again, thank you very much, and salam.